Weekly is an adjunct member of the research faculty at the MOVES Institute, part of the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. He now resides in Wellington, New Zealand, where he works he's almost there, at the Research and Education Advanced Network of New Zealand as Science and Education Outreach Manager. Today, Jeff will present on telemedicine using 4K video, Sage Optiportal, and Ultragrid over long-distance photonic networks.
Thank you for the introduction. How is my image there? Can you guys see this whole screen? It looks to me like it's getting cut off.
It's getting cut off.
Okay, so let me change my aspect ratio here and see what we can do. Do you have a copy locally of the presentation? No. Okay.
We've got this slide tab online.
Yeah, can you bring that up and it might show better, because I'm restricted to VGA here, which is the problem. Oh, okay. So in the interest of time, let me just try one more setting and then we'll get started. And you all in the audience there, you know how to access this for viewing later, right?
Yeah, so just tell us to follow along on the online version.
Okay.
That way, our individual so we can follow along.
Oh, so it'll look like nobody's paying attention. That's fantastic. Okay, well, let's just get started. And there isn't a lot of text here, so so hopefully you can follow along. All right, so for last year's conference for GLIF, how many people in the audience know what GLIF stands for? Raise your hand. One or two. Okay, so I'll explain that. GLIF is the Global Lambda Integrated Facility, and it's basically the cooperative international organization that coordinates between national research and education networks. And every year we have a conference in a different location. It's been in Brazil, New Zealand, Amsterdam, Chicago, San Diego, and next year we'll be in Prague, Czechoslovakia. And it's mostly a bunch of network operators getting together to talk about how do they cooperate from an infrastructure point of view. But as an application guy, I show up and do something cool. So this talk is about what we did last year that was pretty cool. And at the MOVES Institute, we've been interested in using the network for training and education. And you may have heard of America's Army. It was a video game that the MOVES Institute developed in the early 2000s. And so we've always been interested in pushing the network. And a recent push has been towards using the network for modeling and simulation in healthcare. And this demonstration that we did at GLIF fits generally into that. So here's the agenda. I'll let you read that yourself, and we'll move on smartly. So the U.S. telehealth market will grow from a present 240 million per year for, let's see, this was 2014 figures, up to 1.9 billion in 2018. That's an annual growth rate of 56%. That could be really called explosive, and it's not really a bubble. Telehealth is really kind of the future. However, specialists in our current, at least in the US and other places like New Zealand, specialist providers tend to cluster in metropolitan areas while patient populations are widely distributed. That's particularly true in the Veterans Administration, where most veterans, after they exit service and need health care, actually live in rural or small town America. And traveling to a veterans medical center or clinic can be burdensome. The other thing that's at play here is that training and education pipelines in this particular area are quite long. As you know, doctors take many, many years and then go on to specialize after that for several years more. Nurses can take 4 or 6 years depending, and even just something simply as a billing coder for an insurance is several years to get up to speed. So we not only want to use telemedicine techniques for lowering patient times, but also for training and education, and that's a big push at the MOVES Institute. But most importantly, wait times for specialists can be quite long. If you're in Boston and you need to have a mole looked at, it's going to take you 68 days to get an appointment to have that mole looked at. 13 days for a Botox treatment, but almost over 3 months for a mole. That means that what that graph tells us is that more and more dermatologists are turning to cosmetic procedures, and that's taking up more and more of their time. I have an annual dermatology exam, and I book my appointment 12 months out. And that's just the way my provider wants it, and he's not taking any new patients. So we want to extend the ability of people to access these advanced and specialized healthcare using the network. So the goals of the demonstration was to provide a high-resolution, multi-point telemedicine application across several partner organizations for use in dermatology clinical education, cancer epidemiology, and for remote examination, diagnosis, dermatopathology, and patient counseling of skin cancers, regardless of participant location. We wanted to virtualize the patient-physician interface with networking and accessible technologies. And I'll talk a little bit more about those accessible technologies in a moment. But I want you to think about how virtual that really that was, considering that the patient was in San Diego, the primary care physician who screened the patient was in Queenstown, New Zealand, and the dermatologist was in Chicago. So if we can do it over those distances, we can do it around the corner as well. And I think this is a real trend for California. In fact, Kaiser Permanente is already doing it. They are having their patients screened by a primary care physician. The primary care physician takes a picture and sends it to a dermatologist that's in Sacramento, and just part of their everyday workflow is they get in the morning and they check all of their remote images. And those people that show something that's suspicious are immediately referred. People who simply have a rash or a benign mole, they can wait, or they can be treated by their primary care physician. But these current practices have some limitations. They all use kind of a different camera. There's no sort of standardized model here. And it is just a single image, so there's no live interactivity. It's just email. There's no patient dialogue and no immediate feedback. And maybe significantly for people who work in healthcare, that email also creates a HIPAA record, which must be managed by some form of HIPAA system. So in the case of Kaiser Permanente, you have to upload the image in their specific email system, and it's a web service. It's not too egregious, but you can see that that might be difficult for some people to scale. And the last thing is that many in-person visits to dermatologists could really be handled by primary care physicians if those primary care physicians had more interaction with dermatologists, so they had a better understanding of what dermatologists are really looking for. So that's where we are currently. now I want to get a little bit into the networking, the network engineering for this. And it quite literally was a team spanning the globe. We had people in New Zealand, Australia, all throughout the United States, Canada, and even on to Europe. So let me move out of the way here. This is what the network path looked like from New Zealand to the CENIC network, where we patched into the POP at San Luis Obispo. We had 36 plus engineers and managers on the engineering team, more than 6 months of planning with biweekly calls of 30 or more people. The run of the cable was 12,135 kilometers. That's about 9,000 miles, or 8,000 miles, from Takapuna, the landing point in New Zealand, up to the Morro Bay landing point for the Southern Cross network. We had a bit of a challenge in that where the hotel services where the Southern Cross came in peered with AT&T, but they did not peer with CENIC. So we had about a 6-mile air gap between Morro Bay and the San Luis Obispo CENIC point of presence. And that was quite a bit of our time was figuring out what that air gap was and if it could be spanned. And obviously it was. So I'm going to not wait for the thanks, but I'm going to say thanks to the CENIC engineers and the staff and the crew there. They really showed their true colors and came through winningly. So this is where the signal actually terminated, believe it or not, in a hotel in Queenstown, New Zealand. We had a 100 gig network drop into this hotel. It's got to be some kind of first. Maybe there's a Google hotel in Kansas City that's got one, but it was pretty amazing to have this kind of connectivity into a hotel in what is a very, very remote part of the world. So our New Zealand partners on the engineering included Vodafone and Chorus. Those are two private sector providers. Chorus owned the last mile fiber, and Vodafone got us across some of the air gaps that were otherwise present in the REANNZ, the Research and Education Advanced Network of New Zealand. So even in the small country of New Zealand, it was a bit of a team effort. Our North American partners, of course, included CENIC, Translight, Starlight in Chicago, and Ciena. Ciena provided some new networking gear, and that was installed both in New Zealand, and I believe we had some loaner gear for California. And CineGrid. Another quiz. How many of you have heard of CineGrid? Raise your hands for me. So CineGrid is a virtual research organization that uses high-speed photonic networks to experiment, demonstrate, and educate for very advanced high-quality media. Members include Disney Studios, Skywalker, Industrial Light and Magic, Sony Pictures, USC School of Film, and believe it or not, even the Naval Postgraduate School. So what really makes this technology interesting isn't the fact that we had this fantastic network. It isn't really the fact that we were using this network for dermatology. It was the fact that this technology is now come down in price to where it could scale. Several years ago, I put in a major research instrumentation grant to the Department of Defense. It was for $750,000, and it was to buy one streaming camera and the equipment to be able to stream 4K. How many people know what 4K is? Everybody heard of that? Yeah, so that's basically quadruple HD, somewhere around 10 times the size of the image that you're looking at now in scale of pixels. So this little Panasonic Lumix camera you can buy for $1,500 and it will actually live stream 4K. Just 2 or 3 years ago, you'd be stuck with either the Astro Design camera at about $325,000 or the Sony f65 that was all kit included about $200,000. So several orders of magnitude more accessible. With a little data interface that's about $2,000, which you can see down here, you can live stream 60 frames a second in 4K. It takes a lens, and you should buy a good lens, and then you need a capture card to capture the video and get it onto the network using Ultragrid. But the whole bundle was only $4,000, and this is well within the means of even small institutions or local practices. Now, we did use a open source, non-commercial software to get the video from the camera onto the network and across the network. It's called Ultragrid, and it was developed by the Laboratory of Advanced Network Technologies in Czechoslovakia. And we were lucky enough down in New Zealand to have some engineers there to help us set it up. You can read more about Ultragrid there on that link. But if you're considering doing live streaming over the network, this is a fantastic solution. It doesn't require any specialized gear. It's just a graphics card and a commodity PC. Very low latency, which is good for this application. It can do 2K and 4K on both tile displays and native resolution displays. It has support for Sage, that scalable adaptive graphics environment. That's the middleware that we use to collaborate. And it really runs on OpenGL. I'm not going to go through this whole list in the matter of time, but if you're at all interested in sending video out on the network, you should check it out. So we also built a low-cost 8K Optiportal, and if you've been coming to CENIC for a while, you might have recalled a talk I might have given 6 or 7 years ago called a low-cost Optiportal, and we put together a 4K Optiportal with gigantic bezels, that's the space in between the screens, for about $10,000. It had limited sort of capabilities. This one was fully capable. It was 8K, which is 4 times 4K, 16 times HD. So 16 times as many pixels as your HD television at home. Built out of low-cost Samsung 4K TVs that even in New Zealand only cost about $2,500 each. We had 5 custom-built but low-cost PCs running Ubuntu, 10 NVIDIA graphics cards. These are kind of middle-of-the-road graphics cards. You can certainly spend a lot more, but I don't know that you'd want to spend a lot less. And a Blackmagic designed Decklink 4K Extreme. That's about $1,000 to get the video from a camera and onto the network. And of course, if you've ever been to UC San Diego at the Qualcomm Institute, formerly known as Cal IT2, you've been in the V-Room, an amazing facility of so many screens I can't even count them. I believe the large one there is, I think it's over 60 megapixels. And they've got a 10 on a 40 gig network. Now for this demonstration, even though we had 100 gig into the facility there in New Zealand, we only used 10 gig dedicated link. Still, quite good bandwidth, quite good connection speed. And then the real pièce de résistance is the Electronic Visualization Lab's Cave 2. This is at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And this is well over 60 megapixels, 360-degree views around, planar ultra-thin bezel displays. We had all of our equipment set up next to the rendering and the displays. All of theirs is ported to a server room. It's quiet. The audio, the acoustics are great. You can do 3D and 2D models, and it's large enough for very big groups. So this is the kind of infrastructure that you could buy for around $2 million. And this is what I would envision as the centerpiece for telemedicine in a large teaching hospital. So I apologize for the maybe fuzziness of the detail. You should be able to zoom right in on the PDF if you have that. But this is basically our setup. As I mentioned before, we have a patient in San Diego, we have a dermatologist in Chicago, we have a primary care physician and an audience in New Zealand. Only the patient was in 4K. Everyone else was in HD, which seemed to work out just fine. And this is our setup in in Queenstown. You can see we've got an HD camera there. We've got our 8K tile display. You can see behind the tile display are our rendering nodes. Next to the tile display, as we look at it to the right, so on the left of the picture, is the Ciena MX480s. That's our 100 gig switch. And then we've got some other equipment from Ciena on the other side. Just really in the meeting hall of a hotel. So very portable, very scalable infrastructure. This is just the back of some of that equipment, and you can see we're running standard fiber optics. This happens to be Ciena's video gear, which we did not use for the demonstration, but they showed. And this is also capable of encrypting a video stream if you do want that extra layer of privacy. Just a close-up shot of the displays. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the image from Chicago, reflecting the 4K stream from San Diego with Todd Margolis there in the ponytail, and then Todd in context in front of the gigantic screen. And we even had a quadrant to spare. So we had that lower right-hand quadrant, and we were able to push up documents and share stuff in the Sage Optiportal environment. How many people in the audience have had experience with the Sage Optiportal? Do you know about this technology? You can raise your hand or nudge your neighbor. All right, so it's an amazing middleware. You can now get Sage 2.0. It runs in a Chrome web browser as a JavaScript plugin. It just runs. So it's being developed jointly by the University of Hawaii Manoa's Lava Lab and the Electronic Visualization Lab at the University of Illinois Chicago. I highly recommend you check it out. So this is our primary care physician, Dr. Stu, and he is actually having a two-way dialogue with our patient in San Diego, and she is under a bit of a bright light with the camera right in her face, but we're talking about a mole that she's had. So unlike a single picture where it gets emailed and there's no dialogue, he actually got to go through the screening questions that you'd hear if you were in a real doctor's office. And we're watching on the other end, Dr. Margolis, happens to be Todd Margolis, is the tech in San Diego, his father, and we're watching him sort of explain to Sandy, our patient, what it is she wants to be looking for a malignant mole. And he shared that mole image with us as well, you can see in the lower left. So three different places, all interacting and all getting information and all being able to go through this process together. It's really an amazing application of the scalable technology. This is Dr. Margolis, and he's looking at the mole in 4K video in real time. And so the talk that I'm going to give next week at the eResearch Summit in New Zealand is going to be called the 2-meter mole, because we really did have a mole that was about 2 meter high, not the one on Sandy, but the one that we projected before. And Dr. Margolis said it's better than being there in person, which is a pretty amazing thing to hear a clinician say, especially someone with his experience, about being able to see the mole up close. So I think I see our moderator coming up to the podium, which tells me I'm just about out of time. I'm just going to go through some of these images. That's Star Trek, right? That is Star Trek level stuff there. It's amazing. I was blown away. So in conclusion, I want to thank our CineGrid partners, Pacific Interface, Natalie Van Osdal and Mr. Lauren Herr, folks at EVL at the University of Illinois Chicago, Maxine Brown, Luke Renenboe, Dana Plepis, and their whole team. The Qualcomm Institute folks, Tom DeFonte, Todd Margolis, Joe Keefe, and team, and that includes Larry Smar, and my new coworkers at REANNZ, Steve Cotter, Charles Yoon, who really ran that big show of 30+ engineers. Talk about herding cats. Jamie Curtis, who was our network engineer, and the whole staff for their support. And of course, everyone at CENIC, they really caught the ball and ran with it. So thanks to Dave Reese and others at CENIC. There's my contact information. If you're interested in how one moves from California to New Zealand all by themselves, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm live tweeting that later today and tomorrow. I am literally getting on a plane as soon as I finish this talk. So I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'll leave that to our moderator.
Hey, Jeff, can we email those questions to you?
Absolutely.
Let's
or you can tweet them to me, either one.
There's his tweet, at JD Weekly.
That's right, and don't forget that last E.
JDWEEKLEY. You can see it up there.
That's right.
All right. So let's do that. Let's email you. Thank you so much, Jeff.
You're welcome.